I was walking to the studio today, just looking up at the skyline. You see these massive glass towers, the row houses, the construction cranes swinging over the street. And it just feels like the backdrop to our lives. It's just there.
It is. It's the stage we act out our lives on. We wake up in it, we go to work in it, we visit friends in it. It is the omnipresent container of human activity.
Exactly. But then I started reading through the research stack we have for today, this comprehensive deep dive into real estate, and I realized I've been looking at it all wrong. We tend to think of it as home or rent or the mortgage bill due on the first.
But if you peel back the paint and the drywall, it is actually a massive, complex machine.
It's a machine that eats nearly 40% of the world's energy. It's a machine where 4 cents, 4 measly pennies, once bought an entire acre of land. And frankly, it's a machine where some of the most expensive apartments in New York and London aren't homes at all, but basically Swiss bank accounts made of concrete and glass.
That is the dark side of the asset class we'll definitely get to later.
It is fascinating how a building can just, cease to be a shelter and purely become a financial instrument.
We are going to cover all of that. We're basing this deep dive on a massive review of the real estate entry, and it covers everything from ancient Roman law to modern algorithmic pricing.
Our mission today is pretty straightforward. We want to take you from just occupying a space to actually understanding the estate you're in. We need to decode the jargon-free, simple hedonic regression, the difference between a condo and a co-op, and look at the history of how we decided that a human being could own a piece of the planet.
Which is such a weird concept if you really stop to think about it, pointing at the ground and saying, this dirt is mine and that dirt over there is yours.
It's a very weird concept. It's a shared fiction, really, that holds the global economy together. So let's dive in. I want to start with the vocabulary, because I think most of us use land, real estate, and property as, synonyms. If I say I bought some property, everyone knows what I mean. But the source material makes a pretty sharp distinction here.
It does. And legally, that distinction is everything. If you are going to understand this topic, you have to separate the physical from the abstract. Real estate is actually a compound term. You have the real and you have the estate.
Okay, let's break that down. What is the real part?
The real part refers to the physical land, the dirt, the rocks, the geography, the crust of the earth. It is tangible. You can, kick it.
And the estate? That sounds more formal.
The estate part, that's entirely abstract. The estate refers to the interest or the rights a person holds regarding that land. It's a legal concept, not a physical one.
So you can have the land without the estate.
Exactly. Or, more commonly, you can have an estate in the land without owning the dirt forever. Think of it like this. Real estate isn't just a thing. It's a bundle of rights.
A bundle of rights. I've heard this analogy before, the bundle of sticks.
Yes, it's the classic law school analogy. It's a really good one. Imagine you are holding a bundle of sticks. One stick is the right to build on land. One stick is the right to mine under it.
Okay.
One stick is the right to walk across it. One stick is the right to keep other people off it. That's the right of exclusion.
And when you buy a house, you assume you're getting the whole bundle, the whole big pile of sticks.
You assume so. But sometimes, some of the sticks are missing.
Like if there's an easement for a power line, is that what you mean?
Right. The power company holds that stick.
Right.
They have the right to cross your land to fix the wires. You can't stop them.
So you don't have the full bundle?
Not at all. Or, in many parts of the U.S., you might own the surface rights, the grass and the house. But someone else, maybe a big energy company, holds the stick that lets them drill for oil or mine for coal right under your kitchen.
Wow. So you still have the real estate, but your estate, your interest is limited.
Precisely. You own the surface, they own the subsurface.
Mm-hmm.
It's why reading the deed is so important. You need to know how many sticks are actually in the bundle you are buying.
That makes so much sense. Now, looking at the physical definition in the source, it lists the obvious stuff, land, buildings, but then it lists natural resources.
Yes. Anything that is naturally attached to the land is part of the real estate.
Crops, timber, minerals, water, that seems standard. If I buy a forest, I own the trees, that tracks. But then I saw this in the source material and I had to double check it. Wild animals.
Yes. Fere naturae.
Explain this to me. If I buy a generic 3-bedroom house with a backyard and a squirrel runs across the fence, do I own the squirrel?
In a manner of speaking, under the old common law definitions of real property, yes. The wildlife that is strictly on the land is considered part of the natural resource package of that land. while it is there.
So if the squirrel leaves, if it jumps into my neighbor's yard,
It's not your squirrel anymore. If it hops over the fence to your neighbor's yard, it becomes part of their real estate.
that is wild, literally.
It's a fascinating remnant of a time when land wasn't just for living, but for subsistence. You bought land to hunt, to fish, to forage. So the deer in the woods or the rabbits in the field were just as much a part of the asset's value as the timber or the water. They were resources to be harvested.
It really highlights how all-encompassing this definition is. The source uses the phrase immovable property. That seems to be the golden rule here.
That is the defining characteristic. Real property is immovable. Personal property is movable.
The source material spends a lot of time on this distinction between real property and personal property, and it feels like one of those things that causes a lot of arguments during a divorce or a sale.
Oh, it causes endless lawsuits because the line can be blurry.
The test is usually, is it permanently attached?
Right. If you have to use a tool to remove it, or if removing it would damage the property, it's generally considered real property.
So the house is real property, the car in the driveway is personal property.
Easy.
But what about the chandelier in the dining room?
Ah, the classic trap. This is where deals fall apart. Generally, once you screw it into the ceiling, it becomes a fixture, becomes part of the house. It's immovable.
So if I'm selling my house and I have this heirloom crystal chandelier I got from my grandmother, I can't just take it with me.
You better take it down and replace it with a cheap one before you show the house. Or you have to write it into the contract explicitly. Chandelier excluded. Otherwise, the buyer expects the light fixtures to stay. They bought the real estate, and the fixture's now attached to it.
The source used a great example regarding farms to illustrate this.
It's a rolling stock.
Right. The tractors, the plows, the combines, those are expensive pieces of kit.
Extremely expensive.
Yeah.
But they move, they have wheels, so they are personal property, they're chattel. You buy the farm, you get the barn, because it's a building real property.
Yeah.
You get the fences because they are dug into the ground real property, but the tractor, the old owner, drives that away unless you buy it separately.
I like the shake test I've heard before.
The shake test, I haven't heard that one.
Yeah. If you took the property, turned it upside down like a dollhouse, and shook it, everything that falls out is personal property. Everything that sticks is real estate.
That is a very good rule of thumb. The sofa falls out. Yeah. Personal. The fireplace mantle stays put. Real.
Okay, so we know what it is, but who can own it? The source lists a bunch of entities in the U.S. context: individuals, corporations, nonprofits, fiduciaries.
It's a very open market in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
Almost any legal entity can hold title to land. This isn't true in every country, but in the U.S., a corporation has the same property rights as a person.
And within that ownership, we have these tiers. The source mentions fee simple. I see this on forums all the time, but I never really knew what it meant. It sounds like a medieval tax.
It does sound medieval because it is medieval. Fee simple comes from feudal law. But today, it is the absolute top of the food chain in ownership. It's the whole bundle of sticks.
So if I have fee simple ownership, what does that mean in plain English?
It means you own it completely. You have the full bundle. You can sell it, you can destroy it, you can leave it to your kids in your will. There are no time limits on your ownership. It is yours forever, or until you decide to get rid of it.
As opposed to what? What's the alternative?
As opposed to a life estate, which the source also mentions. This is a common tool in estate planning.
Okay, how does that work?
Let's say an elderly parent wants to give their house to their child to avoid probate later, but they want to ensure they can live there until they die.
Oh.
They don't want the kid to kick them out, right?
Makes sense.
So they might transfer the property deed to the child, but retain a life estate.
So they own it, but not really.
They own the right to use it and occupy it for the duration of their life. But the moment they pass away, that life estate vanishes, and the full ownership interest automatically snaps to the child. The parent can't sell the house to a stranger and run off to Vegas because their interest is limited to their heartbeat.
It's amazing how these legal tools allow us to slice and dice time and space. You can own a place for a timeline, not just a physical boundary.
It's all about control. Who controls the land and for how long? That is the essence of the estate.
Speaking of time, let's go back, way back. Because the idea that a person can point to a patch of earth and say, mine, that isn't a law of physics. It's a story we decided to agree on.
It is a social construct, absolutely. Nature doesn't recognize property lines. A wolf doesn't care about your fence.
The source traces this back to Roman law and Greek philosophy.
The Romans were the great codifiers. They gave us the framework of dominium total control. They were obsessed with defining boundaries. But the source makes a really interesting jump to the 15th and 16th centuries.
The era of natural law.
Right, you have philosophers debating the nature of man and government, and they start arguing that property ownership is a natural right,
Meaning it's God-given. Or something else.
meaning it's inherent to being a free human being. The argument was something like, I own my body, therefore I own the labor of my body, therefore I own the fruit of that labor. And if I use my labor to farm a piece of land, I should own that land.
This was a radical thought at the time, wasn't it?
Incredibly radical. Before that, the king owned everything, and you just leased it from him. This shift in natural rights meant that property was something the government couldn't just take away without a very, very good reason.
And this spilled over into international relations. The source brings up a treatise from 1758 by Emmerich de Vattel, The Law of Nations.
Vattel is huge. He was trying to figure out how nations should talk to each other in a civilized world. And he argued that protecting private property was a key part of international stability.
How so?
Well, imagine a French citizen owns a vineyard in Germany. If France and Germany go to war, Vattel argued that the German government shouldn't just seize that guy's vineyard. The property rights of the individual should transcend the conflict of the states.
So property rights started to transcend borders.
Exactly. It set the stage for modern foreign investment. It's a reason why today you can buy a condo in London or Tokyo and feel reasonably secure that the government won't just steal it.
While the philosophers were thinking about it, the British were actually doing it. The source talks about the birth of the real estate profession in England in the 1500s.
It started with agriculture. England was moving away from feudalism. They needed to clear land, drain swamps, and farm more efficiently to feed the growing population.
So they needed people to measure it all.
They called them surveyors.
Which is a term we still use, but usually for the guys with the tripods on the side of the road wearing neon vests.
Back then, they were the valuers. They weren't just measuring the perimeter. They looked at the soil quality, the water access, the timber stand. They told the lord of the manor what his dirt was actually worth in terms of production.
And interestingly, the source notes a linguistic shift. In England, it was surveying. But when the practice jumped the Atlantic to North America,
It became appraising,
appraising, put a price tag on it.
which makes sense for America. America was a land market. Everything was for sale. In England, land stayed in families for generations. In America, land was a commodity to be traded.
Which brings us to the sale of the millennium, the Louisiana Purchase, 1803.
The deal that made America.
I want to pause on this because the numbers in the source blew my mind. I think we all learned in school Thomas Jefferson bought Louisiana from Napoleon.
Right. We see the map in the history book, the big yellow section.
But let's look at the scale. This wasn't just the state of Louisiana. This was the entire middle slice of the continent. From New Orleans all the way up to Montana, it's about 828,000 square miles.
It doubled the size of the United States overnight. It fundamentally changed the nation from a coastal republic to a continental empire.
And the price tag, $15 million.
Which in 1803 was a massive amount of money. It was a huge risk for a young nation.
But the source breaks it down per acre.
Do you remember the number? It's just staggering.
Cents?
4 cents per acre.
I can't buy a single grape for 4 cents today. And they bought millions of acres of prime farmland, the Mississippi River system, mineral rights, for 4 cents an acre.
It completely distorted the American view of land. In Europe, land was scarce. It was owned by the nobility. It was expensive. In America, it was effectively infinite and practically free.
Of course, we have to acknowledge the source material briefly touches on the fact that this transaction ignored the people already living there.
Yes, the indigenous populations. From a legal standpoint, the U.S. bought the preemptive right to negotiate with the tribes. But in practice, it was treated as a transfer of title. It paved the way for Western expansion, which was essentially a massive real estate acquisition strategy.
So now you have all this land, you need people to sell it. The source mentions the oldest real estate brokerage firm in the U.S.
Established in 1855 in Chicago, originally L.D. Olmsted & Co.
Now known as Baird & Warner.
And still operating, which is incredible.
That's wild. 1855. That's pre-Civil War.
It shows that Chicago was the real estate engine of America. It was the gateway to the West. If you wanted to buy a farm in Iowa or a timber lot in Wisconsin, you went through Chicago.
And naturally, where there is money, there are scammers.
Always. As long as there has been land for sale, there has been someone lying about it.
The industry had a reputation problem. The whole snake oil salesman selling swampland in Florida, that cliche comes from somewhere, right?
Buying land you've never seen was a great way to lose money. So the industry realized it needed to organize. In 1908, again in Chicago, the National Association of Realtors was founded.
And here is a square is a rectangle moment for me. Realtor versus real estate agent. I thought they were the same thing.
No, and the association is very protective of this. Real estate agent is a job description. It means you have a license from the state to sell property.
Okay. So anyone with a license is an agent?
Realtor is a trademarked title.
A trademark, like Coke or Kleenex.
Yes. It means you are a member of the National Association of Realtors and you subscribe to their specific code of ethics.
So all realtors are agents, but not all agents are realtors.
Exactly. They coined the term in 1916s specifically to separate the professionals from the peddlers. They wanted to signal trust to the public. They wanted a badge that said, I won't rip you off.
So the industry is professionalizing. Cities are growing. The roaring 20s are roaring. Everyone is making money. Everyone is buying land. And then, 1929.
The Great Crash.
We usually talk about the stock market when we talk about 1929, but the source gives a stat about real estate that is just terrifying.
In the 4 years after the crash, real estate values depreciated by 50%.
50%. Let's just sit with that. You buy a house for $10,000 a fortune then. 4 years later, it's worth $5,000.
But you still owe the bank $10,000. You are so far underwater.
And the bank is failing,
Yeah.
and you have no job. It was a complete systemic collapse.
And the way mortgages worked back then made it even worse. The source explains that before the 1930s, buying a house was awful. You usually had to put 50% down in cash.
50% down. Today, people complain about 20%.
And the loan wasn't for 30 years. It was usually for 3 to 5 years. And here is the kicker. It was interest only. You paid interest for 5 years, and at the end, you had to pay the entire principal back in one giant lump sum, a balloon payment.
So if you didn't have the cash at year 5,
You lost the house. It was a rich man's game.
so the government steps in. The source says this catastrophe is actually what created the modern housing system we have today, the New Deal era.
It had to. The market was completely broken. The source lists the Banking Act of 1933 and the National Housing Act of 1934.
What did they actually do? What changed?
They created the FHA,
Yeah.
the Federal Housing Administration. They introduced mortgage insurance. Basically, the government told the banks, if you lend to regular people for long terms and they default, we will cover your loss.
That risk removal changed everything, didn't it?
It invented the 30-year fixed-rate mortgage. Suddenly, a factory worker could buy a home and pay it off slowly, like rent.
And then came the big one, 1938, Fannie Mae.
The Federal National Mortgage Association.
I feel like I hear Fannie Mae on the news every time the economy gets wobbly, but explain what it actually does. The source describes it as creating a secondary market. What is that?
Okay, this is crucial. Imagine a small-town bank. They have a vault with, say, $1 million in it.
Okay, $1 million.
They lend it all out to 100 families to buy homes. The vault is now empty. They have a stack of IOUs, but no cash.
So when the 101st family walks in and wants a loan,
The bank has to say, sorry, we're out of money. Come back in 30 years when the other guys pay us back. The lending just stops.
that freezes the market completely.
Exactly. Fannie Mae was created to fix this. Fannie Mae comes to that small bank and says, hey, give us those 100 mortgages, those IOUs. We will buy them from you.
So the bank gets its cash back.
The bank gets its $1 million back, plus a little profit.
Yeah.
The bank's vault is full again. And now they can lend to the next 100 families.
It's like refilling the bucket.
It's exactly like refilling the bucket. Fannie Mae created a secondary market where mortgages are bought and sold as assets. It kept the money flowing.
It greased the wheels of the whole system.
It flooded the engine with oil. Without Fannie Mae, the post-war suburban boom Levittown, all of that literally could not have been funded. There wouldn't have been enough liquid cash in the local banks.
But, and there is always a but, in American history, this funding wasn't available to everyone.
No, it was explicitly exclusionary.
The source brings us to 1968, Title VIII, the Fair Housing Act.
This was the legislative response to the civil rights movement. For decades, the real estate industry and the government itself had practiced redlining.
This is where they literally drew red lines on maps.
Yes, they drew red lines around black neighborhoods and said, no FHA loans here, too risky. So white families could get these cheap government-backed 30-year loans to build wealth, and black families couldn't.
It locked an entire generation out of wealth creation.
Precisely. Title VIII in 1968 was the attempt to ban discrimination in renting, buying, and financing. The source notes it focused on the incorporation of African Americans into neighborhoods.
It made it illegal to say, I won't sell to you because of your race.
Right. It changed the legal landscape. But as the source implies, the economic damage of the previous decades was already done.
Fast forward a bit, we get through the 70s and 80s, and then we hit 1999, the tech shift.
The moment real estate went online.
Internet real estate, it seems so normal now. I spend half my life on Zillow looking at castles I can't afford.
Don't we all? It's the modern pastime.
But before 1999, information was gatekept, wasn't it?
Completely. If you wanted to know what a house was worth or what was for sale, you had to go to a broker. They had the book, a physical book of listings. They controlled all the data.
And 1999 broke the lock.
It democratized the data. Suddenly, the consumer knew as much as the agent. It shifted the power dynamic permanently.
So that brings us to today. The source says that as of 2021, 65% of U.S. homes are owner-occupied.
A solid majority. We are a nation of homeowners.
But home is a flexible word. The source breaks down the different types of residential real estate, and honestly, some of these definitions cleared up years of confusion for me.
Like what?
Like apartment versus flat. I always thought flat was just what British people said to sound fancy.
It is mostly linguistic, yeah. But the definition focuses on the perimeter lockable doors. It's a self-contained unit inside a larger structure.
But the big one, the one that trips everyone up, is condo versus co-op.
Oh, yes. This is crucial, especially in cities like New York, Chicago, or Washington, D.C.
In my head, they're both just apartments in a big building. What's the real difference?
The difference is what you actually own. In a condominium, you own real property. You have a deed to your specific unit. You own the drywall, the floor, the air inside your walls. It is yours.
Okay, that seems straightforward.
And you jointly own the common areas, the hallway, the lobby, the pool with your neighbors, but you own your box.
And a co-op.
In a housing cooperative, you do not own your unit.
Wait, I don't own the apartment I live in.
No, you own shares in a corporation. And that corporation owns the entire building.
So I'm a shareholder, not a property owner.
Exactly. And your shares come with a proprietary lease that gives you the right to live in apartment 4B.
Why does that distinction matter so much?
Control. In a condo, if you want to sell your unit to a guy who plays the drums at 3 a.m., you largely can. It's your property. In a co-op, the board of directors, your neighbors, can interview the buyer and say, no, we don't want a drummer here.
Because they aren't just your neighbors, they are your business partners.
Exactly. If the drummer stops paying his maintenance fees, the corporation suffers, and you might have to pay more. So co-ops are famously strict. They can reject buyers for almost any reason they want.
The source mentions co-ops are very common in places like New York City, but also in Indian metro cities.
Yes, in dense urban areas where shared infrastructure is the only way to live, the corporate model often makes more sense than the individual ownership model.
Speaking of global terms, I loved some of the architectural words the source threw in. We know duplex and terraced house, which is just a townhouse.
Row houses, very efficient use of space.
But then it listed chawls and havelis.
These are specific terms from India. A haveli is beautiful. It's a traditional townhouse or mansion, usually centered around a courtyard. It's designed for its specific climate and for an extended family structure.
Then a chawl.
A chawl is more utilitarian. It's a type of residential building found in Mumbai. Think of long corridors with single rooms opening off them and shared bathrooms at the end of the hall. It was built for mill workers originally. It's high-density, low-cost community living.
The source also mentioned the measurements. We are so used to square feet in the U.S.
Right. It's our standard.
But in South Asia, they measure in gaz, quila, marla, and biga.
It reminds us that real estate is hyperlocal. We measure land in the language of our ancestors. A biga varies in size depending on which state in India you are in. It's not standardized like a meter or a foot.
And we can't forget the portable dwellings.
The nomads.
Mobile homes, houseboats, but the source even lists tents.
Usually temporary, with roof and walls consisting only of fabric-like material.
It sounds funny when you define it like a lawyer. So precise.
It does. But for millions of people, refugees, the unhoused, or even digital nomads, a tent is their primary residential estate. It is their home.
Okay, so we have established what real estate is, where it came from, and the different shapes it takes. But now we need to talk about the impact, the footprint.
The green elephant in the room.
The stats in the source are sobering. It says that in 2019, real estate was responsible for 39% of total worldwide emissions.
Almost 40%. Think about that.
Yeah.
We worry about cars, we worry about airplanes, we worry about plastic straws. But the buildings we are sitting in right now are the biggest culprit.
And it's not just the lights and the AC, is it? I think that's what people assume. Oh, I'll just turn off the LED bulbs.
No. A big chunk of that 11% is what we call embodied carbon.
What does that mean, embodied carbon?
It's the emissions from making the materials, the concrete, the steel, the
That's
glass.
just the building is made of.
Concrete is terrible for the planet. The chemical reaction to make cement releases massive amounts of CO2. So before you even unlock the front door of a new building, before you ever flip a light switch, that building's already done huge damage just by existing.
So we can't just efficiency our way out of this with better insulation. We have to change how we build.
Exactly. But the source points out that this relationship goes both ways. Real estate hurts the environment, but the environment can hurt real estate value.
Drastically.
We're seeing this now with climate change and sea level rise. But even locally, if a piece of land is contaminated, it's worthless.
The source mentions ESA's environmental site assessments.
This is now a standard part of the business. If you are buying a commercial strip mall or an old factory, you hire a firm to do a Phase 1 ESA.
What are they looking for?
They are detectives. They check old records. Was this a gas station in the 1950s? Is there an old oil tank leaking into the groundwater? Is there asbestos in the walls?
Because if there is, the property might be worth zero.
It might be worth less than zero. You might buy the land for $100,000 and then find out you are legally responsible for $1 million cleanup.
That's terrifying.
So the market is reacting. We are seeing the rise of green development.
The source tracks this back to the 1970s.
The environmental movement. Now we have things like LED certification.
Hey, is that actually making a difference, or is it just marketing? Greenwashing?
It's a mix, to be honest. But the push for resource efficiency is real. Better insulation, smart glass, solar integration. The goal is to get that 39% number down, not just to save the polar bears, but because operating an inefficient building is becoming too expensive.
It feels like a necessary shift. But let's pivot from the moral cost to the financial cost. Because for a lot of people, real estate isn't just about shelter, it's about money.
It is the ultimate investment vehicle for most people.
The source distinguishes between buying for use, living in it, and buying for investment. And under investment, it lists flipping.
The reality TV favorite.
Buy it, fix it, sell it.
It's arbitrage. You are betting that the market price plus the cost of repairs is lower than what someone will pay for the finished product. It's high risk, high reward.
Speaking of risk, the source categorizes investments into 3 buckets: core, value added, and opportunistic.
This is how the big pension funds think.
Yeah.
Core is safe. A fully rented apartment building in a nice part of Boston. Low return, but you won't lose your shirt. It's steady income.
And opportunistic.
That's the Wild West, ground-up development. Building a hotel in a neighborhood that might become cool in 5 years. You can make a fortune, or you could go bankrupt.
Now, here is where the expert in you needs to explain something to me. The source mentions a term that sounds like a paradox: hedonic regression.
Ah, yes. My favorite.
And it says real estate structures tend to depreciate with age according to this principle. But wait, the golden rule of real estate is it always goes up. My grandpa bought his house for $10,000 and sold it for $500,000. How is that depreciating?
This is the great illusion of homeownership. You have to separate the land from the house. The land appreciates. They aren't making any more of it. Demand goes up, supply stays flat, price goes up. The dirt becomes more valuable.
But the house itself.
The house.
Yeah.
The physical pile of bricks and wood, that is a rotting asset.
Like a car, the moment you drive it off the lot.
Exactly. Every day, the roof gets a little older, the pipes rust a little more, styles change. Nobody wants a pink bathroom from the 1950s anymore.
So the house is actively losing value.
Hedonic regression is the statistical way of measuring that decay. It separates the value of the amenities from the land.
So the reason my grandpa's property value went up
is because the dirt underneath the house became insanely valuable. The house itself probably lost value, unless your grandpa spent a fortune maintaining and renovating it.
That is a huge aha moment. We confuse the container with the location.
Every single time. We think we made money on the house, but we made money on the land.
Now we have to talk about what the outline calls the dark side of real estate investment.
The London and New York phenomenon.
The source describes luxury real estate as a store of value.
Think of a gold bar. You don't do anything with a gold bar. You can't live in it. You put it in a safe and hope it holds its value.
But in this case, the gold bar is a $50 million penthouse on Billionaires Row.
Correct.
The source says these units are often used by corrupt foreign government officials and business people to launder money.
It's a massive issue. Imagine you are an oligarch in a country with a shaky government.
Yeah.
You steal $100 million from the public treasury.
Okay.
You can't just keep it in cash under your mattress. And you can't put it in a local bank because a dictator might seize it tomorrow. You need to get that money out of the country and into something stable.
So you buy a condo in Manhattan.
It's a stable jurisdiction.
Right.
Property rights are protected. Remember our friend Vattel from 1758?
Right. International law protects it. The U.S. government isn't going to seize it arbitrarily.
So you buy the condo through a shell company. You never live there. You never rent it out. It just sits empty. It's a safety deposit box in the sky.
That is dystopian. You have these needle-thin towers casting shadows over the park, and nobody is even inside them.
Meanwhile, the locals can't afford rent. It creates massive social tension. It turns housing, a basic human need, into a pure financial derivative.
The source does mention that development is different from this kind of speculation.
Yes, development is the actual hard work of building. Planning, zoning, construction. And interestingly, the source claims development can be less cyclical than pure investing.
Why is that? That seems counterintuitive.
Because the timelines are so long. If you start building a skyscraper today, it won't be finished for 5 years. You might start in a boom and finish in a bust, or vice versa. It forces you to take a long-term view. You can't day trade a skyscraper.
We have covered a staggering amount of ground today.
We really have. From sticks to skyscrapers.
We went from the Roman concept of dominium to the 4-cent acres of the Louisiana Purchase.
From the squirrels in your backyard to the empty penthouses of the oligarchs.
From the invention of the 30-year mortgage to the carbon footprint of concrete.
It's a lot to process.
So what is the takeaway here? When the listener drives home today and pulls into their driveway, what should they be thinking?
I think the takeaway is that you are part of a system. You aren't just living in a box. You are holding an interest in a piece of the planet.
You're holding a bundle of sticks.
You are holding a bundle of sticks that connects you to history, to the law, to the global economy, and to the environment.
It makes you look at the walls differently. You start wondering, where did this drywall come from? Who owned this land 200 years ago? Do I actually own the air above my roof?
And most importantly, check your deed for the wild animals.
Always check for the squirrels.
But seriously, I want to leave the listener with a question based on what we discussed.
Go for it.
We talked about how real estate is a natural right, according to the old philosophers.
Yeah.
But we also talked about how it causes 40% of global emissions.
Right, a huge contradiction.
As we move into the next century and climate change becomes the dominant story, will that right to property start to erode? If building a single-family home becomes in itself an environmental crime, does your right to own it disappear?
That is a heavy thought. Will the real eventually overtake the estate, the physical reality overriding the legal one?
We'll have to wait and see.
Thank you for guiding us through the invisible structures of our world.
My pleasure.
And thank you for listening to The Deep Dive. Go check your deeds, think about your footprint, and we'll catch you on the next one.